So, good morning, everyone. We are starting our press conference. We have first deputy of Russian mission to the UN, Dmitry Polyanskiy, as a speaker. We haven't received too many questions, but that's good. Then you will ask them right now. Ambassador, you have the floor.
Thank you, Fedor. I hope everybody sees and hears me okay. Yeah. So good morning. I'm very glad to see you. This is our second press meeting. I hope that it will take place regularly. We try to spare time for answering your questions and speaking to you live. We received a number of questions, and thank you very much for those who sent these questions. So I will maybe start with them and then make some introducing comments on what we thought as a highlights of the month and maybe of the week. And then I will be ready to take your direct questions. And again, I count on your understanding if my answers on your very specific questions will be not very much satisfactory and in depth as you might hope. To do so, I need, of course, ideally to have them beforehand. So I will start with Ibtisam Azim's question from Al-Arabi. His question was, which steps from Iran and the US do you think should be taken to go back to JCPOA? First question. Well, I think everything is clear right now. The situation was clarified when United States withdrew its initial letter allegedly triggering snapback. We all understood that snapback was not happening, that it was only in the imagination of our American friends. We were very sympathetic with them. We didn't make a fuss about it, hoping that they will come to realistic understanding of the importance of JCPOA, and that's what happened. We think that's a very right step, but it is a logic step. We also, of course, note that Iran has taken a lot of steps that would that can be viewed as running counter to JCPOA. But Iran was not, as you know, the first to strike. Iran was not the first to initiate these steps. They were made in response to American withdrawal from this agreement and from the sanctions, because of the sanctions that were introduced, because of some other steps. So Iran was responding to these steps, and we also take note of the reassurances of Iran and as well as of international agencies that all these steps that Iran has taken can be repealed. And in this context, of course, we were very much encouraged by the results of the recent visit of the director of IAEA, Mr. Grossi, to Tehran. He came with certain reassurances. That's why we are now quite optimistic. We think that the situation is quite manageable and sustainable. Nobody needs to make irresponsible steps. We need to understand the mechanism, how the United States would return, because there is no automatism to this. It should be a common decision of the participants. I think that this work is going on in Vienna. As far as I understand, at least if we judge from commentaries and from media experts, the big question is who does what and in what consequence, who starts first. Iranians say that United States should first review its sanctions and repeal them. Europeans also need to do certain steps, and then Iran will repeal what has been done. You know about, of course, the law that requires certain measures from Iranian government. United States saying that Iran should first repeal these steps, and then United States will think about about canceling sanctions and so on. We don't think it's a productive discussion. We think that there can be some forms, some ways how to ensure that United States returns. Iran's positions are not threatened by this. So there are means to do so, and our people in Vienna are now busy working on this possible scenario of how the return can take place. I think that the most important thing now at this stage is to abstain from any inflammatory rhetoric, from provocations that could endanger this process, which we all see as very positive. So let's wait and see, and hopefully in the nearest future we might have some encouraging news about how it will be done and on what basis. The second question from Ibtisam was, what do you make of the fact that the last week's meeting between Europeans and Americans did not include Russia and China? I assume that this is also about Iran. Yes, it is written in the notes that it is also about Iran. Well, you know, we organize meetings with many countries. Not all of them are all embracing. So we don't make a problem that Europeans are meeting Americans and discussing certain issues of their interest. They are allies. They have the right to do so. Sometimes we meet together. Sometimes we meet without them. Sometimes they meet without us. So we don't think that this is something that should be exaggerated as important. We don't have any divergences on the views so far in New York about what's happening around about Iran, about the JCPOA. Well, there might be some nuances, of course. We are different countries and we work in a different way, but in general there is a unity, and that's why we're not jealous of some countries meeting and discussing certain things without us. We know that there will be more meetings with us, and we are sure that the decisions also will be taken with our full participation. Well, then I will go to maybe Philippe Ratet. Three questions. One of them is General Assembly adopted last year a rule permitting the vote online. Are you in favor of the same rule for the Security Council? If not, why? No, we are not in favor, and we were not in favor of GA's decision to vote online. It's not that we want to hamper the activities of General Assembly and Security Council, but we think that even at the time of pandemics, we should be very responsible and very vigilant to the way our meetings proceed and our voting procedure goes. You know that there are nowadays a lot of means how to interfere into communications between different parties, how to hack and get some information, how to compromise the information that is being transmitted online. And these are all very serious things. And we, since the very beginning, thought and maintained that it's not by chance that the founding fathers of the United Nations decided to establish permanent representations here that were supposed to go and meet personally. So if somebody is raising a hand in the hall or pushing a button sitting in the hall, it's not the same as if somebody is pushing a button through his computer, because you don't know who is this person really. Is he eligible to do so? Is there a quorum for such a decision? Was it himself, or was it a third party that compelled him to push the button? If you are, for example, let's imagine that there is a voting procedure within Security Council and through VTC, and people are raising hands. If there are technical glitches and if there is no connection to the internet for certain actors, how do you think the voting should proceed? Shall we wait for the others? Shall there hand be counted as such during the screen, even if we don't see it at the screen. And these things happen. You follow our meetings through VTC, and I can't say they're ideal. So we can put up with this when it's about discussing topics, but it's very difficult to put up with this when it's about voting, which is very important procedure. That's why we adopted in the Security Council the written voting procedure, which ensures that the vote is given by a right party through right channels. Yes, it's a bit lengthy, but it's not the end of the world. The alternative of this, as we hope, will be returning to normalcy and conducting meetings in Security Council chamber or General Assembly hall, as we all hope will happen quite soon. So we are not very much in these online procedures. Also, as you might know, that now we are all dependent on internet, and depending on internet, we are depending on the host country, as you know. Some of them might smile, saying that this is all phobias and exaggeration, that some representations can be deprived of internet. But I can tell you that this is not fairy tales. For example, our general consulate in New York for several days was cut off phone connections and internet connections, and still envisages certain glitches in internet communications, which are quite serious. So can you imagine, for example, what would happen if Russian mission is cut off the internet and we are supposed to take part in the voting? These are very serious things. So we are not in favor of relying on internet in such important things. We think that there are procedures like written procedures which give us additional safeguards in this situation, and we are of course hoping to get back to normalcy, which would solve all our issues. We know that the situation in New York is becoming better, maybe not as quick as we all hope, and we don't see any serious problems for us to return to the headquarters, of course, with observing all the necessary precautions. Russia is always in favor of such move. We were, since the very beginning, ready to work in the Security Council chamber without going online, but unfortunately it was not shared by our colleagues. So we hope that very soon we will be back in the Security Council chamber and seeing you at media stakeout, which is also part of very pleasant routine for us, and we miss it incredibly. Well, I also have a question about Mali from Philippe. After the recent G5 Sahel summit, participants said they want a more robust mandate for the MINUSMA in June. Not anymore a peacekeeping mission, but a mission which will impose peace. Do you agree with this idea and change the mandate? Well, it's a tricky issue. On the one hand, of course, there is a lot of feeling that one should be maybe more decisive, more efficient in certain areas of instability, and Mali, of course, is one of them because of terrorist activities. On the other hand, it's a very blur line between helping a country, respecting its sovereignty, and imposing peace, as it was formulated. We don't think that the robust mandates is a good answer to the challenges that these countries have, because peacekeepers, first and foremost, they are supposed to be neutral and impartial. And for their security, they shouldn't be viewed by any of the parties as a biased side, because they will help them antagonize them with the population, at least with certain groups of the population, because you know that the situation on the ground in such areas is not very clear to understand. Sometimes there are a lot of factors that should be taken into consideration when you analyze the situation. We support the current mandate of MINUSMA. Frankly speaking, we don't yet know the details about what was decided on the G5 Sahel summit. But nevertheless, you should also remember that we are always supportive of G5 Sahel forces. We were in favor of providing them with UN mandate and UN financing. So we need to look into the details. But as for the robust mandate, we are a bit cautious. So of course we also need to see what it is all about. The third question from Philip was, during the last briefing in January, after a question on this subject, you said that you are going to give us the number of Russian advisors staying in the Central African Republics. We never got this number. Can you give it to us? Well, this is an oversight on my part, maybe that I didn't provide you with the numbers. I can tell you that we always informed about sending instructors to the advisors and instructors to the Central African Republic. We never concealed these figures and these facts. So according to the information that we provided to 21-27 committee, there are 535 advisors and inspectors in this country. And of course, they are there on the basis of official request from the authorities of these countries. And they are involved in training operations in such areas as special areas, technical engineering, medical tasks, topographic tasks, communication, marksmanship, and also physical, psychological, and logistical training. So far, we are quite satisfied with this. I don't have any other figures about Russian presence in Central African Republic. It may vary a little bit from what there is on the ground, but I don't think there is a big difference. Well, questions from Majid Gli. They are about Kurds, both of them. So first one, on Iraq, how does Russia view growing tensions between the federal government and Kurdistan regional government over budget and deep economic crisis? Do you think the UNAMI is doing enough to contain this crisis? In the meantime, I see that there are more questions further. I count on you, so to sum them up and then to somehow let me answer them, okay? I myself am not reading the chat.
We have some people waiting in the line. So when you finish with
okay, if for example, when I'm saying something, if you receive questions which are more or less on the same subject, you can just step in and ask me to say more on these issues. Okay.
Sure, but we only have hands raised here. So.
Okay. So on Iraq, we know that there are some difficult questions in relations between Baghdad and Erbil about common budget and distribution of profits from oil. And of course, these are all aggravated by the crisis that Iraq is still witnessing. So we know that the government is taking urgent measures to rectify the situation, but the situation is still very complex and difficult. Well, urgent and painful reforms are needed in this country. This is also not a secret. And we deplore very much that there are certain obstacles in the dialogue between federal government and Kurdish authorities, but we don't think it's a tragedy. We think that Iraqis are wise people, and they will sort out their differences by themselves in their own way. We also think that the good office that is being provided by UNAMI is welcome in the country, and we think that UNAMI is doing a good job in this regard. But of course, there are certain limits of its involvement in these processes, not to surpass a certain line which would mean interference into internal situation in this country. Second question from Ajit is also about Syria. Kurds are still not part of the political process in Geneva. This further pushes them to depend on the presence of the US military in Syria. Is Russia doing anything diplomatically to reassure the Kurds about their future in Syria? Or this issue is left for the military and people on the ground? Well, it's a strange question, frankly speaking, because as you know, the Kurds are participating in the work of Constitutional Committee, and this was one of the preconditions for Russia to proceed with the assistance information in setting up of the Constitutional Committee. We were very much insistent on religious and ethnic minorities that would reflect Syrian society to participate in this process. We believe that only on such basis the decisions that will be elaborated by this body will be durable and sustainable. I assume that when you say Kurds, you have in mind a certain organization that is representing only a part of Kurdish population, Syrian Democratic Forces, and they indeed are relying on the United States. But logic is a bit twisted in your reply, because we think that the presence of the United States in Syria, in the northeast of Syria, is the factor that pushes the Kurds to the cooperation with the United States, and not vice versa. And that creates a lot of risks, including the risks of separatism in these areas. This is very worrying if we analyze the statements of US representatives responsible for Syria on this issue. For example, James Jeffrey, when he was clearly saying that one of the tasks of US presence in these areas is not to allow them to return under the control of Damascus. It means the violation of unity and territorial integrity of Syria, as foreseen by Resolution 2254. In the meantime, of course, as you know, Americans are exploiting the oil resources on this territory, and there are a lot of articles on this in this regard. You also know that our military are participating in the patrols in the Kurdish areas in the northeast. They are providing security. They try to block possible tensions between Kurdish detachments and Turkey. They act as intermediaries in many situations when there are also tensions between Kurdish groups and Arabic groups, which traditionally populate these areas. We are engaged in these activities, and we will continue with them. You also know that there is a diplomatic work which is ongoing. We are speaking with all the parties that are involved in these conflicts, including Kurds, and we will help in the future as well to push them to sort out their differences and to live in one united countries, which was the case for many, many years. As you know, for centuries, Kurds and Arabs were living together side by side, and the Syrian Arab Republic existed and will exist on this basis for many years on. The last question that I have, it's about Myanmar from Ryochi Teraguchi, the Yomiuris Shimbun. Riot police in Myanmar shot dead anti-coup protesters and injured several others as security forces increased pressure on people against the military takeover. This happened after UN Security Council's press statement that expressed deep concern at the declaration of the state of emergency by the military. Could you tell us what are the prospects of sanctions or next steps by UN Security Council against individuals or entities to stop the shooting and repression to peaceful demonstrators and reverse the course? Well, it's a very emotionally formulated question. It's very difficult to answer it without emotions from my side. We all are very worried by what is happening in Myanmar, and you saw our um, press statement on this issue, which, by the way, many people were doubting that it will happen, and there were already certain allegations that Security Council is split and that Russia and China do not support the common position on this issue. We do support the common position. We are also very worried. We think that the country should return to normalcy, to normal rule as soon as possible. But we are not in favor of interfering into internal affairs of certain states. And this is a very easy situation, easy trap to fall in when you analyze such situations. Myanmar as a country is not on the agenda of the Security Council. There are a lot of other situations when there are either military coups or protests or something else, and it doesn't mean that all of them should be viewed by the Security Council. We think that the task of United Nations here, the task of United Nations Special Envoy, Mrs. Burgener, is to help the parties to come to certain solutions in the interests of the Myanmar people that would restore democracy, that would allow the country to move on, that would ensure liberation of those detained, and that would avoid further violence. That's why we would be, and we are very cautious on the steps that could incite this violence, that could show that we are trying to interfere on the side of one or other party in this situation. This would be only to the detriment of Myanmar, to the detriment of this country, and it would clearly mean that there is foreign interference into its internal affairs. I think we should avoid such situation, and that's why we are also not a big fan of sanctions. You know, it in African context, we think that this is a powerful tool, and this tool should be used only in a targeted way, not to make things worse. Well, countries introduce sanctions in their own national capacity. They are not UN sanctions, because in the United Nations we need to come to a certain common denominator on such issues, and it's not always easy. That's why it takes a certain effort, but I'm sure that we will continue discussions on Myanmar, with regional partners, with ASEAN countries, and that we will come to further steps. They might be not as radical as are foreseen in your question, but we hope that they will be efficient, and that they will really be felt at the ground and help the actors in the Myanmar crisis to come to a certain solution. Well, Theodore, what are the questions that we have?
We have a number of them. James Bass was the first. James, go on.
Do I have them in the chat, or they will be formulated orally?
Most of them will be formulated orally.
Hello, Ambassador. Thank you. Good morning. Thank you very much for doing this for us. I have two questions. One is a quick one. You have a Syria humanitarian meeting tomorrow. We're getting to in the next few months to the renewal of the cross-border resolution. Has Russia come to a position of how many checkpoints should be authorized this time? So that's the quick one. And then the other one is your thoughts on the new US ambassador. She presents her credentials tomorrow, we are told. What do you think, what are you hoping will come from her presence here in New York? Obviously, the context of President Biden, that speech to the Munich Security Conference a couple of days ago, where he described Russia as attacking our democracies and weaponizing corruption, fresh sanctions being planned by the US on the SolarWinds cyber attacks. So with all that context, how do you see the relationship with this new ambassador?
Okay, thank you for these questions. On cross-border and Syria. Indeed, the time is coming for us to review the relevant draft resolution on this issue. You know that there is only one border crossing functioning now, and we think that everybody has adapted to this situation. We don't see any major problems that resulted from closing one border crossing Bab es Salam last time, and I'm not to mention Al Yarubiya because the deliveries have already adapted to this. You know our basic position that we see the cross-border arrangements as temporary ones. They were very much welcome, but when Syria was unfortunately very fragmented and when the government had little control on its territory. Now the situation has changed. It is mostly about Idlib that we speak when we speak about cross-border deliveries. We so far we haven't yet looked into this issue deep enough because we want to analyze how not only how efficient are cross-line alternatives, but how demanded they were by the actors and how sincere they were in exploiting these possibilities. Because we think that there are very important reserves in this issue, and there is a famous situation about this cross-line convoy to Idlib, to which Syrian government has given permission almost 1 year ago in April. So there are no obstacles from the part of Syrian authorities to go there. On the other hand, there are obstacles from those who control Idlib and who do not allow do not want to allow such cross-line deliveries to this enclave. And this is the situation that we will not tolerate. We need to understand and to see serious engagement on this issue. If we see practical problems that arise from cross-line deliveries, but on the condition that all the parties are engaged in such cooperation in good faith, it will of course influence our position on cross-border in a positive way. Let's put it this way. But if we see that countries are merely sabotaging cross-line deliveries, that they just don't want to use this tool because it's not favorable for them for different reasons, mostly for political ones, and they don't want to engage with Syrian government because it's Syrian government and they are not thinking about people in need, but they're thinking about political calculations, it will also affect our position. And so far we are evaluating this, so far we are in contact of all the parties. But I flag to you the situation with the convoy, which is not changing, and this is ridiculous. We will raise this issue tomorrow, for sure. We will hear, I know, a lot of mantras from our Western colleagues, but well, there are issues that should be solved, and we say that cross-line deliveries is a good and efficient alternative to cross-border deliveries. The difference is that cross-line deliveries respect sovereignty and even territorial integrity of Syria, and cross-border do not. That's the starting point of our position. As for U.S. ambassador, she's mostly welcome, of course. We know that there is a U.S. presidency coming, and we are looking forward to interaction with her. We heard that she's a professional. She's one of us, let's put it this way. It's always easier to interact with professionals. So you can count on our most favorable attitude and positive emotions towards her as a member of our Security Council family. We all have very good personal contacts among permanent representatives, their deputies, and this does not depend on the positions that we take. This is something that goes further. We need to find a common ground, even if our capitals are sometimes far apart on different issues. And we also know that the new ambassador will seek guidance in Washington, will seek guidance from President Biden. So the things that you mentioned from his Munich speech and from other things, They, of course, raise concerns about how we will interact with the United States as such. I mean, not with the ambassador here, but with the United States as such, because the main problem is that the logic of containment Russia is still there. The logic of Russia being an enemy, being a threat is also still there. It's very difficult to imagine how the interaction with us might change with such starting points of the positions of the new administration. We have received, as I told last time, we have received certain encouraging positive signals. The START treaty was prolonged. There are certain, we very much welcome the positive developments on the JCPOA. There are certain other issues that can be highlighted that give reason to certain optimism. But of course, we will we will judge the new administration by what it does. There are a lot of things that Russia and the United States can do together. We're in favor of cooperation. We're in favor of close contacts on this issue. But again, and I'm sorry for citing this all the time, but it takes two to tango. And really, we are ready to dance, but we need a good and reliable partner who knows all the moves and who respects us as a country with certain positions, and who does not view us as a threat, and who doesn't want to content everything that we do, and doesn't want to see our obvious national interests on many issues. But we are ready to work together, and at least on our side, there will be no problems for the new ambassador who is coming. Only the red carpet and warm welcome. I'm absolutely sure about this.
Ambassador Pamela Falk has a kind of similar question. We will let her ask it, and then we'll follow the line.
Yes, thank you very much, Ambassador. Thank you, Fedor. Ambassador, it is a similar question to that of James, but more specifically, we've seen cooperation on arms control. Do you foresee cooperation with the new Biden administration, with Ambassador Linda Thomas-Greenfield, on things like Iran or other more contentious issues, or and contentious issues in terms of U.S.-Russia relations? Thanks.
Surely we seek such a cooperation. We were seeking it with Trump administration. We haven't ceased seeking such a cooperation. Our door was always open. It was not us who complicated our bilateral relations. It was not us who adopted endless sanctions. It was not us who, digged out certain conspiracy theories about Russia's meddling, Russia's involvement everywhere in all malign activities in the world. So we were always there, and we are there as we are. We are ready to cooperate. Again, as I already said, there are a lot of things that we can do together. First and foremost, in the area of strategic stability. We are ready for serious, meaningful discussion on this. The prolongation of the START treaty is a very good basis. Do you hear me okay?
Yeah? Yes.
So
and a quick follow-up, what do you think is the biggest challenge for U.S.-Russia at the Security Council coming up?
Well, the biggest challenge is the ability to listen to each other and to adapt certain approaches to respect the interests of each other. I remember at times on my shift here when there was too much of megaphone diplomacy, when the countries were just, cornered, and Russia was also tried to be cornered on certain issues, put in awkward situations for some PR reasons, which is not the diplomacy that we favor. We think that diplomacy is something that is conducted for the sake of reaching an agreement, of respecting the interests of each other, and of finding a way forward. It's not for cornering the country, it's not for humiliating it, it's not for finger pointing. So we would prefer more of this, I would say, quiet but efficient diplomacy, coming to terms. Certain issues should be solved, of course, and there are a lot of problems that we face domestically. I mentioned already to you the situation of our colleagues from the Consulate General in New York, which is ridiculous. This is not the most important, but a very sensitive issue in our relations as well. You know that we still have our property, which we can't use here in Long Island, and nobody can explain to us what is happening there, and we have no access to this property, and still we are the owners of this property. So this is a very strange situation, which also needs to be changed. The issue of visas to our representatives here, to our delegates, is also a very urgent one. You know, the situation was very confusing during the last in-person meeting of high-level week, when a lot of members of our delegation were deprived of these visas. We still have a lot of questions and problems in rotating our personnel because of this, but inevitably, because of principle of the mirror, Americans have the same problem in Moscow, so it doesn't serve to the interest of any country. So we are ready to clear away all these heaps of rubbish, I would say, in our relations. But again, I am referring to tango.
Other than here, have you approached this issue with the new Biden administration yet?
I'm sure that my colleagues in Washington are approaching this issue. This is their task. They are in a much worse position than we're here in New York. I know that my bosses in Moscow, like Sergei Ryabkov, who is Deputy Foreign Minister responsible for relations with the United States and for strategic issues as well, he's also engaged in consultations with American counterparts. So we are looking forward that they will yield some positive results, which will, of course, help us a lot to move forward on international issues as well. But again, as far as we are concerned here in the mission, you must be absolutely sure that we will be most welcoming the new American ambassador and most ready to work with her, and she can count on our support and our understanding, as we hope we can count on hers.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Pamela. James Reynolds, the next.
Good morning, Ambassador. Thanks so much for the briefing. I've just got a couple of technical questions about some of the things that are on the Security Council agenda. The first one is the mission to Iraq. Am I right in thinking that there's a debate in the Council as to whether or not to increase the size of the UN mission to Iraq in order to assist with the upcoming elections there? And also, what's the national position of Russia on this one? I understand that you guys are against that extension of the mandate. Second one is, can you just give us an update on this deployment of ceasefire monitors to Libya? Where is it at now? And what does Moscow see as what should happen there?
Well, as far as Iraq is concerned, yes, there is talk about extension or modification of UNAMI mandate, and we are in the middle of the discussions right now. I wouldn't be very keen on displaying our national preferences in this regard. We know that there is a demand in Iraq for the United Nations to monitor the elections, and we are ready to help this country in elections preparations, but it's not, it's not arithmetic. It's not 2+2 situation. Otherwise, it would have been very easy. There are a lot of factors that should be taken into consideration, and we are now in contacts with the Iraqis, all of us, in an attempt to find a formula. It can be. The solutions can be different. That's why I don't want to enumerate them right now. As for the deployment of Libyan observers, as far as I know, there is already. I'm not very much involved, and could send me this question beforehand. The others did, but I know that how do you call it in English? The reconnaissance mission that is now being sent there to see what's the best way forward. You know that we all welcomed the agreements that were taken, that were adopted in Geneva. We hope that this country will break this silence of violence and instability that is encircling it for 10 years already, exactly 10 years. When the NATO operation started in 2011, we will mark 10 years, I think, next month. So we are very much supportive of these steps. We think that all the Libyan actors, Libyan tribes should be taken on board, and this would be the main building block for the future country, united country, with all the tribal groups, all the actors having a say there. It's a long way to go. It's not an easy way. We know that the elections are planned for December of this year, but to make this date feasible, a lot of things need to be done. And of course, I would say 99% depends on Libyans themselves. That's our basic principles. It should be also Libyan-owned and Libyan-led process. That's how we approach these issues. So it's in general, that's what I wanted to say about this issue.
Valeria, Rebecca.
Theodore, I would need. Yes. How many questions do we have there?
We have about 2 or 3 questions. Next is Edie, but Valeria had some follow-up.
Okay, I will need 5 minutes. 5 minutes maybe before the end of the press conference, when I have a couple of announcements and comments about our preferences. Okay, for the next month. Okay, so the next question.
Okay. Are you going to ask your question on Libya now?
Yeah.
Thank you, Fedor. Thank you, Ambassador. I'll be quick. So, could you confirm that the Security Council has received and is evaluating a dossier on allegation that the appointment Libya's Prime Minister is involved in corruption and vote buying episode during the last Libyan Political Dialogue Forum? Thank you so much.
I wouldn't comment on this issue, frankly speaking. I haven't heard about these things, and there is nothing that I comment, frankly, for the press in this regard. Thank you.
Edie, go ahead.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ambassador, and apologies for not submitting questions. 2 follow-up questions. On Iran, assuming that the United States and the government agree on a dance for the Biden administration to rejoin the JCPOA, does Russia support a follow-up, some kind of an agreement on other issues related to Iran that including ballistic missiles and actions in other countries? And a follow-up question on Syria. Russia supported the 2015 Geneva Agreement, which was enshrined in a Security Council, which calls for a whole roadmap leading to UN-supervised elections. Yet we are coming up to elections in Syria in May that are going to be far from UN-supervised, without a revised or a new constitution as also called for in that roadmap. How does Russia view this, and how do you view actually ending this conflict with the Constitutional Committee at a deadlock or standstill now?
Okay, the connection was not very good, but I hope I got a good understanding of your first issue, question on JCPOA plus, of something that might follow. So we think that these are 2 different issues. One thing is JCPOA, its implementation, returning to JCPOA. It has very concrete and strict time frame, including in the resolution 2231. And we are not supportive of any discussions that something should be modified in JCPOA, that there should be more participants in this plan of action. On the other hand, as you might know, as you might notice during our presidency last October, we also promoted the idea of deepening cooperation among the neighbors in Persian Gulf. We think that there are a lot of issues that should be discussed there by the neighbors, with the involvement of the neighbors, some confidence building measures, some arrangements that would avoid any risk of confrontation between neighbors or between external powers. So we are most in favor of promoting such a dialogue, which might result in certain formulas that would allow countries of the region to move forward. But again, this is not JCPOA and this is not JCPOA plus. These are two different tracks. As far as Syria is concerned, the Syrian elections, I can tell you that there is nothing about in 2254 that Syria is not allowed or is not entitled to hold elections before the work of Constitutional Committee is completed. So the target is the same, to have these UN supervised elections after the formulas of constitutional arrangements would be achieved by all the Syrians, and this process is going on. But we think that it doesn't affect the oncoming elections, which Syria has all the rights to conduct. And again, there are no provisions that would stipulate otherwise. That's why the elections will be there, and then I assume that there should be other elections on different basis, on the basis of maybe the new constitution or the new arrangements that will be achieved with the help of Mr. Pedersen. So this is another process, and we heard the plans of some Western countries who from the outset are saying that they will not recognize this election, that they are not legitimate, and so on and so forth. This is their right to do so, but we think that there are no reasons for such a position. So we're looking forward to these elections, and we're sure that they will be conducted with due respect of current Syrian legislation. If necessary, I think we should all help in organizing these elections. This is our position. But again, we know the position of the others. We take note of it. We regret it. We make it absolutely clear at the relevant meetings, but we can't change it, of course. This is a vicious circle of Western approach towards Assad, towards Syria. This is kind of inertia that pushes these countries. Okay, maybe last question or last couple of questions.
The last question which we have in our chat is from Dulce Leimbach.
Hello, Ambassador. Thanks very much for this coffee briefing. Pardon me?
Where is my coffee? You said
where's
my
your coffee?
Where's? I just realized that really I don't have any coffee in front of me. That's my oversight. Okay. Yeah.
I'm sorry to hear that. But where is the Security Council in returning to its chamber? Because there was some discussion last week saying that Russia didn't want to return to the UN if it couldn't go into the chamber, that it was reluctant to go into ECOSOC. And you mentioned there's a track 2 on the JCPOA?
No, there are no track 2s on JCPOA. There is something bigger, regional, apart from JCPOA. JCPOA, there is only one track, and I hope that it will be going very fast with the returning of Americans. As for our returning to the headquarters, I think that you misinterpret our position, as some people do. We are, since the very beginning, you will never find any indication from Vasily, from myself, from the others, that we want to go online, that we want to work online. Actually, we had a very good alliance with Christoph Heusgen, whom we miss very much in the Security Council personally, to go back to the headquarters and to work there. At one point of time, the only option for this was ECOSOC chamber, and you know that we held several meetings in the ECOSOC chamber, which was better than nowhere. But you know this feeling when you have your own flat, your own apartment, and you're supposed to live with your friends. It's very nice, it's very cozy, you have coffee in the morning, but still you are, well, you want to return to your own flat, your own apartment. And we did a lot of things to ensure this return. And you know that it was on Russian initiative and by Russia that we installed this plexiglass dividers in the chamber. And it was absolutely safe to be there, to have meetings there, which is absolutely different picture. Even with these dividers, we still are in the Security Council chamber. The visibility is absolutely different, and the whole world has the picture of kind of a normalcy when Security Council is sitting there discussing things. We are very much in favor of this. So we had about, I think, 10 even more meetings since the moment when we installed the dividers. The situation in New York, if we speak about this, was at this time even worse than it is now, and the trend now is positive. Then the trend was negative. It didn't scare us out of Security Council chamber. There are absolutely no cases of transmission of COVID-19 in the UN building, neither in General Assembly nor in Security Council. That's why we see absolutely no reasons to put off the issue of our returning to the Security Council chamber of the United Nations. And this is our clear position that we defend, and we can do it tomorrow, we can do it today. We understand that, well, the speed of the train is determined by the speed of the slowest when, I would say. So we need to take on board position of everybody. Some countries are a bit reluctant for such. Okay, let's wait for them. But I'm hoping that we will make such a return quite soon. And again, Russia is most of everybody in favor of such a return. Thank you. So
we're happy that everyone, every journalist is catching every word of Ambassador Polyansky, because Michelle Nichols heard that there were two last questions. So
2 questions.
Yeah, so the last one belongs to her.
Thanks, Fyodor. Hi, Ambassador.
Please be very short, because otherwise you will steal my time and I will not be able to sum up and to make
very short. Does Russia believe that a Security Council resolution is needed to ensure people are vaccinated in conflict areas?
We are discussing this resolution right now. We are not against it. There are certain technical issues that we are now trying to clarify. Maybe a resolution itself will not be a decisive point in the process of vaccination, because very much will depend on the countries themselves, on different actors. So I don't think, my personal position is that Security Council maybe is not the main body who would be decisive in this process. But as for the resolution, we hope that we will be able to agree on it. We continue discussions. There are issues on vaccination in this resolution, and we are working with our British colleagues right now to find necessary formulas. Okay. Thank you. Just maybe a couple of points. I would like to draw your attention to the anniversary that we are having next month on the 4th of March, if I'm not mistaken. It's anniversary of so-called Skripal poisoning in the UK. I just wanted to flag to you that regardless of what you might read in the media or what our Western colleagues would say, so far we have received no answers to our questions that we posed to our British colleagues. So this whole case remains a mystery, and there are no proofs so far. What we see now is that this case is already being used as a building block in the same way as, for example, Litvinenko case, where we also see no proofs of our involvement, for formulating more accusations towards Russia, on assuming that Russia did it and that there are proofs that Russia is behind this. Unfortunately, this is already the practice, and I can assure you that there are no proofs so far. There is no cooperation. There is no news about Skripal, and there is no plausible explanation of what has happened. We are very much interested to learn what has happened, and we totally deny any our involvement in these events. So I would like you, if possible, as journalists, not to let this issue go off the pages, because there are pending questions from us to our British colleagues, to our European colleagues, that are not answered. I would say that this scheme was also used in the recent case of so-called Navalny poisoning, where we also posed a lot of questions to our German colleagues, where we asked for the proofs, but there are no proofs and there are no answers, only accusations. So this is already kind of a template of how to accuse Russia of something and not to prove that Russia did it, and already make new accusations. This is very frustrating for us. We will not let it go. We will follow up on this issue. And I also count on your interest not to fade vis-a-vis these attempts to present Russia as a rogue state, to present Russia as a violator, as a criminal state. There are absolutely no reasons for this. And again, when you hear about Skripal case, about Skripal poisoning, please remember that nothing is proven, and there are no signs of cooperation with us on this issue to answer our legitimate questions. And the second point I wanted to flag to you is also that yesterday we had a very sad discussion in the General Assembly initiated by Ukraine on the so-called temporary occupied territories. I wanted to draw your attention to my statement in this regard. I think it's self-explanatory. It's on our website. The whole issue is very sad because Ukraine continues to live in certain twisted reality about these facts. It still does not engage in dialogue with the people in Donbass. It's not implementing Minsk agreements, and I think that the prospects of any settlement becomes gloomier and gloomier every day. On our initiative in this month, we also held a special meeting of Security Council devoted to the process of implementation of Minsk agreements. We wanted to flag the issue of Ukrainian not compliance of these agreements, which are confirmed by the Security Council. And this is a very dangerous trend, which could result in very bad situation for the Ukraine in the future. So we are very much worried, and we also ask you, if possible, not to decrease attention to this situation, which is very deplorable and which is very dangerous, because 4 million people in the east of Ukraine are living in very precarious conditions and situations, facing Ukrainian shellings and facing absolutely total ignorance during negotiations in Minsk. So they are absolutely, their existence is almost denied by Ukraine. They are called occupants on their own land, which is of course very frustrating for them, and which affects their position on future political settlement. That's what I wanted to flag. And unless you have something really very urgent to ask me or really very important, I would wish to all of you a good day, and I wish you all health, stay healthy, and please follow our work, ask us questions. I again encourage you to formulate them beforehand, which makes life a little bit easier for me to prepare, and we are determined to continue this practice at least once a month. We will see in the future. how to proceed. So thank you very much for your attendance, and have a good day.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, Ambassador.